The galaxy was burning. Across 10,000 light-years, the war between the Galactic Consortium and the Vorkith Dominion had raged for nearly 2 centuries. Worlds that once held billions now drifted as dead rocks. Species that had built civilizations over millions of years were reduced to refugees, hiding in the dark spaces between stars. The Consortium, an alliance of over 100 species, fought desperately to survive against an enemy that showed no mercy and took no prisoners. The Vorkith were predators in the truest sense. They did not conquer worlds to rule them. They consumed them. Their ships descended upon planets like locusts, stripping resources, enslaving populations, and leaving nothing but ash behind. Their empire grew fat on the suffering of others, and their hunger seemed endless. In the great halls of the Consortium assembly on the station world of Nexus Prime, representatives of dozens of species gathered to hear the latest reports from the front lines. The news was never good anymore. Ambassador Thestion Vor of the Keldari Collective stood before the assembly, his forearms spread in a gesture of despair. His species had lost their homeworld 3 decades ago. Now they were scattered across 100 refugee stations, slowly dying as a people. The Vorkith have taken the Miran cluster, he announced. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. 14 colony worlds, 60 billion souls, gone in less than a standard month. Murmurs of horror rippled through the assembly. The Miran cluster had been considered safe, deep within Consortium territory. If the Vorkith could strike there, nowhere was truly secure. High Chancellor Yendris of the Thashan Federation rose from her hovering platform. She was ancient by the standards of her species, her crystalline body clouded with age. But her voice remained strong. "We must find new allies," she said. "We cannot win this war alone. We have sent requests to every known civilization in the galaxy. Surely someone will answer." "There is one who has not answered," said a voice from the shadows of the chamber. Ambassador Creel of the Sithani emerged into the light. His serpentine body coiled around his speaking platform as his cold eyes surveyed the assembly. "The humans of Earth, they have refused our requests 17 times. A ripple of frustration passed through the gathered representatives. Earth, the humans, a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. They occupied a single solar system on the outer edge of the galactic arm, far from the war, far from everything. And they had made it abundantly clear that they wanted nothing to do with galactic affairs. The humans are irrelevant," said Admiral Torvax of the Velian Navy. His massive form filled his platform, scarred and battle-hardened from centuries of fighting. "They have perhaps 50 ships of outdated design. What could they possibly offer us? They are children playing with toys while the adults fight for survival. They have refused to join either side," Ambassador Creel noted. "Perhaps they are simply cowards, hiding in their little corner of space, hoping the storm will pass them by, or perhaps they are wise." High Chancellor Yendris said quietly. "Staying out of a war they cannot win. It matters not," Admiral Torvax declared. "The humans are too weak to help us and too far away for the Vorkith to bother with. They will sit in their isolation while the galaxy decides its fate without them. Let them hide. When this war ends, one way or another, they will have to live with the consequences of their cowardice." The assembly moved on to other matters. The humans of Earth were forgotten, dismissed as a minor curiosity in a galaxy full of more pressing concerns. But the humans had not forgotten the galaxy. 47 light-years from Nexus Prime, in the cold darkness beyond the orbit of Neptune, a small probe drifted silently through space. It looked like debris, a chunk of rock no different from the millions of other objects in the outer solar system. But hidden within its core was technology that would have made the Consortium's best scientists weep with envy. The probe was watching, recording, transmitting, and it was just one of thousands. Across the galaxy, in every major conflict zone, human observation networks gathered data. Stealth ships no larger than shuttles slipped through battle lines undetected. Quantum encrypted transmission relays bounced information across impossible distances. Every weapon, every tactic, every strength and weakness of both the Consortium and the Vorkith was cataloged, analyzed, and stored. On Earth, in a command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Sarah Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The room around her was a marvel of technology, screens covering every wall, displaying real-time information from across the galaxy. Her staff moved quietly between stations, monitoring the war that humanity had chosen not to join. "The Vorkith are accelerating their offensive," reported Commander James Okonkwo, her chief intelligence officer. "At their current rate of advance, the consortium will collapse within 2 decades. Perhaps sooner." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. She was 63 years old, but gene therapy kept her sharp and strong. She had dedicated her entire career to preparing for a day she hoped would never come. "And the Vorkith's awareness of us?" she asked. "Still minimal. They know we exist. Their scouts have passed through our outer system twice in the last decade. Both times, they classified us as a primitive species of no strategic importance." Commander Okonkwo allowed himself a small smile. "We made sure they saw exactly what we wanted them to see." Admiral Chen rose from her chair and walked to the main display. A holographic map of the galaxy floated before her, conflict zones marked in angry red. The Vorkith dominion spread across the galactic east like a bloodstain, growing larger with each passing year. And there, in the outer arm, a tiny blue dot marked the position of Earth. So small, so insignificant, so far from the fighting. And that was exactly how humanity wanted it. "Show me the fleet status," Admiral Chen ordered. The display shifted. The solar system appeared, but not as any consortium or Vorkith observer would recognize it. Hidden in the asteroid belt, concealed within hollowed-out moons, waiting in the darkness beyond the heliopause, icons representing ships appeared. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, battleships larger than anything the consortium had ever built, carriers capable of deploying entire wings of combat drones, destroyers designed specifically to counter Vorkith tactics, all of them dark, silent, waiting. For 40 years, humanity had been building. Every resource, every credit, every hour of labor that could be spared had gone into one singular purpose: preparing for the day. When the war came to them, we could help them, Commander Okonkwo said quietly. "The consortium, they are dying out there." Admiral Chen closed her eyes for a moment. It was a thought that haunted her, that haunted everyone who knew the truth about humanity's hidden strength. They could intervene. They could tip the balance. They could save billions of lives. But the Secretary General and the United Earth Council had made the decision long ago. Earth would not enter a war it did not start. Earth would not sacrifice its children for species that had ignored humanity for millennia. Before the war began, Earth would wait and watch and prepare. And if the war ever came to them, they would be ready. "The consortium would demand control of our forces," Admiral Chen said. "They would use our ships as cannon fodder, just as they use everyone else. They would drain our resources and discard us when we were no longer useful. We have seen how they treat their junior members, and if the Vorkith come for us..." Admiral Chen opened her eyes. Her gaze was steel. "Then they will learn why humanity learned to be patient. They will learn why we watched and waited. They will learn what happens when you knock on our door uninvited." Across the solar system, the hidden fleet waited. Automated systems ran endless diagnostics, keeping every ship in perfect condition. Crews trained in simulators for battles they might never fight. Weapons capable of cracking planets sat dormant in their housings. Earth appeared weak. Earth appeared irrelevant. Earth appeared to be exactly what the galaxy believed it to be: a primitive backwater species, hiding from a war they could not comprehend. But appearances were deceiving. In the outer reaches of the galaxy, Vorkith Fleet Lord Krasix received a new set of orders from the Dominion Command. The war against the consortium was progressing well, but their supply lines were stretched thin. They needed to secure their flank before the final push. His scouts had identified a potential target: a single solar system occupied by a young species with minimal defenses, easy prey. A quick victory to boost morale and gather resources before the next major offensive. Fleet Lord Krasix studied the data on the humans of Earth. 50 ships, no significant orbital defenses, a population still concentrated on a single planet. They had refused to join either side of the war, which meant they had no allies who would come to their rescue. Perfect. He assembled his armada. 3,000 ships, more than enough to crush any resistance. The humans would serve as slaves or fuel for the Dominion's war machine. Their world would be stripped of resources and left as a dead husk. Just another conquest in an endless parade of conquests. As his fleet entered hyperspace, Fleet Lord Krassix allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be easy. The humans would not even understand what was happening until it was already over. He could not have been more wrong. The alarms began at 03 for 7 hours, Earth Standard Time, deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland. Admiral Sarah Chen was already awake. She had been reviewing intelligence reports when the first sensor stations detected the hyperspace signatures. By the time she reached the command center, the main displays were filled with red icons. 3,000 ships, Commander Okonkwo reported. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed his tension. Vorkuth configuration. They dropped out of hyperspace just beyond the orbit of Pluto. Admiral Chen stood before the holographic display, watching the enemy fleet form up. 3,000 ships, the largest force the Vorkuth had ever sent against a single target. They were taking no chances. Have they transmitted anything? She asked. Standard Vorkuth demand for unconditional surrender. They are giving us 6 hours to comply before they begin their advance. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. This was the moment they had prepared for. The moment she had dreaded and anticipated in equal measure for her entire career. Get me the Secretary General, she ordered. 10 minutes later, Secretary General Marcus Webb appeared on her personal display. He was an older man, his hair white, his face lined with decades of responsibility. Behind him, she could see other members of the United Earth Council gathering in the emergency chamber. Admiral Chen, he said, I assume you have seen the arrivals. Yes, sir. Vorkuth Fleet Lord Krassix, commanding 3,000 ships. They expect us to surrender. Secretary General Webb was silent for a moment. Then a small smile crossed his weathered face. They finally came, he said. Took them long enough. What are your orders, sir? Execute Protocol Omega. Wake up our fleet. It is time to show the galaxy what we have been doing for the past 40 years. Admiral Chen felt a weight lift from her shoulders. A different weight, heavier and more terrible, settled in its place. This was it. No more hiding. No more watching from the shadows. Understood, sir. And our response to the Vorkuth demands? Secretary General Webb's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. Only cold determination. No response. Let them wonder. The transmission ended. Admiral Chen turned to her staff. You heard the Secretary General. Execute Protocol Omega. All stations, all ships, all systems. Wake them up. Across the solar system, signals raced through hidden relay networks. In the asteroid belt, massive doors concealed beneath centuries of accumulated dust began to open. On the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, power systems that had sat dormant for decades hummed to life. In the darkness beyond Neptune, where no Vorkuth scout had ever thought to look, engines began to warm. The sleeping giant was waking up. Fleet Lord Krassix stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Devourer of Worlds. He was a massive creature, even by Vorkuth standards. His armored hide scarred from 100 battles. He had conquered 17 star systems in his career. This would be his 18th. Any response from the humans? He asked his communications officer. Nothing, Fleet Lord. Complete silence. Krassix felt a flicker of amusement. They were paralyzed with fear, exactly as he had expected. Primitive species always reacted the same way when faced with the might of the Dominion. They froze, unable to comprehend the destruction that was about to fall upon them. They have 3 hours remaining, he said. Begin advancing the fleet. Let them see us coming. Perhaps the sight of our ships will loosen their tongues. The Vorkuth Armada began to move. 3,000 ships advancing in perfect formation. A wall of death sliding through the darkness of space. At their current speed, they would reach Earth in less than 2 days. Krassix watched the tactical display with satisfaction. His scouts had done their work well. The humans had a small defensive fleet clustered around their home planet. 53 ships, mostly older designs. A few orbital stations of no significant threat. Nothing that could challenge even a fraction of his force. Fleet Lord, his sensor officer called out. I am detecting unusual readings from the asteroid belt. Unusual how? Power signatures. Large ones. They are appearing throughout the belt. Krassix frowned. The asteroid belt was empty. His scouts had confirmed this. Just rocks and debris. More specific, he demanded. I am not certain, Fleet Lord. The signatures are consistent with ship reactors. But the numbers cannot be correct. The sensors must be malfunctioning. Show me. The tactical display zoomed in on the asteroid belt. What Krasix saw made his blood run cold. Thousands of power signatures were appearing where moments ago there had been nothing. Ships were emerging from inside hollowed-out asteroids. Massive vessels, bigger than anything in his fleet. And they were still coming. More and more of them. An endless stream of icons filling the display. That is impossible, Krasix whispered. But it was not impossible. It was simply hidden. And now it was awake. On the command deck of the UES Vengeance, Admiral Chen watched her fleet assemble. 12,000 ships. Battleships that could match any vessel in the galaxy. Carriers loaded with combat drones. Destroyers equipped with weapons specifically designed to counter Vorkith tactics. For 40 years, humanity had studied the Vorkith. They had analyzed every battle, every strategy, every piece of technology. They knew how the Vorkith fought. They knew their strengths and weaknesses, and they had built a fleet designed specifically to kill them. All ships report ready, Admiral, Commander Okonkwo said. Awaiting your orders, Admiral Chen nodded. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Chen to all ships. For 40 years, we have watched and waited. We have built our strength in secret while the galaxy burned around us. Some called us cowards. Some called us fools. But we knew this day would come. We knew that sooner or later, someone would knock on our door. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today, the Vorkith have come to our home. They expect to find easy prey. They expect us to cower and beg for mercy. They expect to add Earth to their list of conquered worlds. Her voice hardened. They are wrong. Today, we show them what humanity has become. Today, we answer their knock. And may God have mercy on their souls, because we will not. The fleet began to move. 12,000 ships advancing toward the invaders. The asteroid belt emptied as vessel after vessel joined the formation. From the moons of Jupiter, more ships emerged. From hidden bases on Saturn's rings, still more. Fleet Lord Krasix watched his tactical display with growing horror. The numbers kept climbing. 8,000, 10,000, 12,000. Where had they come from? How had they built this many ships without anyone noticing? Fleet Lord, his tactical officer said, his voice trembling. The human fleet outnumbers us 4-1. And their ships, their technology, it should not exist. Their weapons signatures are unlike anything in our database. Krasix gripped the railing of his command deck until his claws left grooves in the metal. This was wrong. Everything was wrong. The intelligence had said 50 ships. 50, not 12,000. We do not retreat, he snarled. The Dominion does not retreat. All ships, prepare for combat. But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his heart. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had never failed. But he had also never faced anything like this. The two fleets approached each other across the darkness of space. 3,000 Vorkith ships against 12,000 human vessels. The invaders had become the prey. And the prey was not pleased. Admiral Chen watched the distance between the fleets shrink. The Vorkith were holding formation, preparing to fight. She had expected nothing less. The Vorkith did not understand retreat. It was bred out of them. All weapons ready, Commander Okonkwo reported. Human fleet is in attack position. The moment they enter range, open fire, Admiral Chen ordered. Everything we have, no mercy. They came to destroy our home. Make them regret it. The first shots were fired at 09 to 3 hours. Human plasma cannons, designed using reverse-engineered Vorkith technology, but refined and improved beyond anything the Dominion possessed, tore through Vorkith shields like they were paper. Missiles loaded with antimatter warheads slammed into hulls designed to withstand nuclear strikes and reduce them to vapor. The Vorkith fired back. Their weapons had been terrifying the galaxy for centuries. Against consortium ships, they were devastating. Against the human fleet, they were barely effective. Human shields, designed with full knowledge of Vorkith weapons, absorbed the incoming fire with ease. In the first hour of battle, 800 Vorkith ships were destroyed. The humans lost 3. Fleet Lord Krasik's watched his fleet dying around him. His tactical officer was dead, killed when a secondary explosion tore through the bridge. His communications array was in ruins. His flagship was burning. How, he whispered to no one. How is this possible? But there was no one left to answer him. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 6 hours. By the end, 2,847 Vorkith ships had been destroyed. The survivors, fewer than 200, drifted helplessly in space, their weapons exhausted, their engines dead. Fleet Lord Krasik's was among the survivors. His flagship was a wreck, barely holding together. When the human boarding parties arrived, he did not resist. There was nothing left to resist with. They brought him to the bridge of a human battleship, the UES Vengeance. He stood in chains before a human female in a crisp uniform. She was small, almost fragile-looking compared to his massive form, but her eyes were hard as iron. Fleet Lord Krasik's. Admiral Chen saith news of the Vorkith defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On Nexus Prime, the consortium assembly fell into chaos. Representatives, who had spent decades dealing with the steady approach of extinction, suddenly found themselves facing a new and confusing reality. The humans, the primitives, the cowards who had refused to help, had just destroyed 3,000 Vorkith ships in a single battle. High Chancellor Yendris called for order, but it took nearly an hour before the assembly was calm enough to proceed. Even then, the murmurs of disbelief continued. This must be a mistake, Admiral Torvax declared. He stood at his platform, his scarred face twisted with confusion. The humans cannot possibly have destroyed an entire Vorkith armada. They had 50 ships. 50. Our intelligence confirmed this. Your intelligence was wrong, Ambassador Creel said. His serpentine body coiled tightly around his platform, his cold eyes fixed on the main display. The reports are confirmed. The Vorkith sent 3,000 ships to Earth. Fewer than 200 survived. The human losses were minimal. How? Demanded Ambassador Thesjanvor, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of bewilderment. How did they build a fleet capable of this without anyone noticing? We have been observing them for 40 years. Apparently, we were not observing them well enough, High Chancellor Yendris said quietly. The humans did not want us to see. So we did not see. The implications of that statement hung heavy in the air. For 40 years, humanity had hidden an entire military buildup from every intelligence service in the galaxy. They had watched the war unfold, studied both sides, and prepared themselves in secret. The species that everyone had dismissed as weak and primitive had been playing a much longer game than anyone had realized. We must contact them immediately, Ambassador Creel said. If they would join our cause, the war could be won within the year. With their fleet added to ours, the Vorkith would be crushed. You think they will join us? Admiral Torvax laughed bitterly. We begged them for help 17 times. They refused every time. Why would they help us now? Because the Vorkith attacked them, High Chancellor Yendris said. The humans did not want this war, but the war came to them anyway. They will want revenge. Then we must offer them everything they want. Ambassador Thesjanvor said. Full membership in the consortium, trade agreements, technology sharing. Whatever it takes, the assembly began to debate terms. What could they offer the humans? What would be enough to bring them into the fold? They had to act quickly, before the humans did something unpredictable. But the humans had already made their decision. In the command center beneath the Swiss Alps, Secretary General Marcus Webb addressed the United Earth Council. The chamber was filled with the leaders of Earth's nations, all of them still processing what had happened in the battle above. The Vorkith have been defeated, Webb said. But this is only the beginning. The Dominion will not accept this loss. They will send more ships. They will come again and again until either we are destroyed or they are. Then we must end them first, Admiral Chen said. She stood beside the Secretary General, her face calm but determined. We cannot wait for them to come to us. We must take the fight to them. And the consortium? Asked Director Chen Wei of the Asian Federation. They will want to ally with us now. They will offer us membership, resources, anything to bring our fleet under their command. Secretary General Webb shook his head. We will not join the consortium. We will not place our ships under their control. We have watched how they treat their junior members. We have seen how they sacrifice smaller species to protect their own interests. We will not become their cannon fodder. Then what do you propose? Asked President Elna Vasquez of the American Union. We take our own path, Admiral Chen said. We strike directly at the Vorkith homeworld. We end this war on our terms, not theirs. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. What the Admiral was proposing was audacious beyond belief. The Vorkith homeworld was deep within Dominion territory, protected by the largest concentration of ships in their empire. The consortium had never even attempted to attack it. Can we win? Asked Prime Minister Yuki Tanaka of the Pacific Confederation. Admiral Chen pulled up a holographic display. It showed the Vorkith Dominion, their territory, their fleet dispositions, their defensive positions, all of it based on 40 years of observation. We know everything about them, she said. We know their ships, their weapons, their tactics. We know the location of every major fleet, every supply depot, every defensive station. We built our entire military specifically to defeat them. Yes, Prime Minister, we can win. The consortium will not be pleased, Director Chenwei noted. They expect us to join them, to follow their lead. The consortium has been fighting this war for 200 years and losing. Admiral Chen replied, we will not ask their permission. We will not wait for their approval. We will end this war our way. They can thank us later. Secretary General Webb looked around the chamber. He saw the faces of leaders who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. He saw determination. He saw fear. And beneath it all, he saw hope. The decision must be unanimous, he said. We are committing humanity to the largest military action in our history. If anyone objects, speak now. Silence. Webb nodded slowly. Then it is decided. Admiral Chen, you have your orders. Take the fleet. End the Vorkith Dominion. 2 days later, the human fleet departed the solar system. The consortium had sent dozens of diplomatic messages, each more desperate than the last. They offered full partnership. They offered leadership positions in the alliance. They offered anything and everything they could think of. The humans did not respond to any of them. When the human fleet entered hyperspace, it did not head toward consortium territory. It did not coordinate with consortium commanders. It charted its own course, a direct line through Vorkith space toward the heart of the Dominion. 12,000 ships, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, moving with a speed and purpose that left the rest of the galaxy scrambling to catch up. On the bridge of the UES Vengeance, Admiral Chen watched the stars blur into streaks of light as her flagship entered hyperspace. Around her, her crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for decades. They were ready. Admiral, Commander Okonkwo said, we are receiving a transmission from High Chancellor Yendris of the consortium. She is asking to speak with you personally. Put her through. The image of the Thashan leader appeared on the main display. Her crystalline face was difficult to read, but her voice carried unmistakable concern. Admiral Chen, she said, on behalf of the Galactic Consortium, I must ask you to reconsider your current course of action. A direct assault on the Vorkith homeworld is unprecedented. If you would coordinate with our forces, we could— High Chancellor, Admiral Chen interrupted, her voice polite but firm. We appreciate your concern, but we did not ask for your advice before, and we are not asking for it now. You cannot simply ignore us, Yendris said. The consortium has been fighting this war for centuries. We have experience, knowledge, resources, and yet you are losing. Admiral Chen's voice remained calm. You have been losing since the war began. Your strategies have failed. Your alliances have crumbled. Your species are dying. We chose not to make those same mistakes. Yendris was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was harder. The Vorkith are not the only threat in the galaxy, Admiral. You are creating a new power without any oversight or accountability. The consortium cannot allow. Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. High Chancellor, let me be very clear. We did not ask for your permission to build our fleet. We did not ask for your permission to defend our home. And we are certainly not asking for your permission now. Stay out of our way. When the war is over, we can discuss the future. Until then, do not contact us again. She cut the transmission. Commander Okonkwo looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. The consortium will not forget that. I know, Admiral Chen said. But right now, the Vorkith are the threat. We will deal with the consortium's hurt feelings later. The fleet continued its journey through Vorkith territory, past conquered worlds and enslaved populations. Every system they passed through, they broadcast a simple message: Earth is coming. Those who stand aside will be spared. Those who fight will be destroyed. Some Vorkith commanders chose to fight. They were destroyed. Others, seeing the size and power of the human fleet, chose to withdraw. They were allowed to retreat. The humans were not there to conquer every world. They were there for one target and one target only. Vorkith Prime, the homeworld of the Dominion, the heart of an empire built on the suffering of countless species, the symbol of everything the Vorkith represented. After 3 weeks of travel, the human fleet arrived. Vorkith Prime was a massive world, dark and heavily industrialized. Orbital stations surrounded it in layers, bristling with weapons. A defensive fleet of over 5,000 ships patrolled the space around. The battle for Vorkith Prime began with fire. 5,000 Vorkith ships surged forward to meet the human fleet. Orbital defense platforms opened fire with weapons designed to crack planets. The space around the Dominion homeworld became a storm of energy and death. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Vorkith were throwing everything they had at her fleet. It was exactly what she had expected. All ships, execute Pattern Sigma 7, she ordered. Carrier groups, deploy fighter screens. Battleship lines, advance and engage. The human fleet moved with precision that shocked the Vorkith commanders. Where their enemies had always been reactive, fighting desperate defensive battles, these humans attacked with the confidence of predators. They knew exactly where to strike, exactly when to move, exactly how to counter every Vorkith tactic. 40 years of watching, 40 years of studying. Now that knowledge became death. The first wave of Vorkith ships lasted 20 minutes. Human plasma cannons, enhanced with technologies the Vorkith had never seen, tore through shields and armor with terrifying ease. Missile salvos overwhelmed point defense systems. Fighter drones swarmed larger vessels, targeting critical systems with surgical precision. Supreme Commander Draxer watched the battle unfold from his command bunker, deep beneath the surface of Vorkith Prime. His tactical officers worked frantically at their stations, trying to coordinate a defense against an enemy that seemed to know their every move. Before they made it, "How are they doing this?" Draxer demanded. "How do they know our formations, our tactics?" "Unknown, Supreme Commander," his chief tactical officer replied. "Their responses are too precise. It is as if they have seen this battle before. They know us better than we know ourselves." Draxer slammed his clawed fist against the console. For centuries, the Vorkith had been the hunters. They had conquered and consumed without mercy. Now, for the first time, they were the prey. And the humans were relentless. In orbit, the battle continued. The Vorkith defense fleet, despite its size, was being systematically dismantled. Human ships worked in coordinated groups, focusing fire on single targets until they were destroyed, then moving to the next. No energy was wasted. No shot was missed. Admiral Chen watched the Vorkith fleet numbers shrink. 4,000 ships, 3,000, 2,000. The orbital stations were falling too, one by one, their weapons silenced, their crews dead or captured. "Admiral," Commander Okonkwo reported, "the Vorkith defensive perimeter is collapsing. We have clear lines of approach to the planet. Casualties: 107 ships destroyed, 233 damaged but operational." Chen nodded. The exchange rate was even better than she had hoped. For every human ship lost, they had destroyed nearly 50 Vorkith vessels. It was not a battle. It was an execution. "Continue the advance," she ordered. "Press them toward the planet. Do not let them regroup." The human fleet pushed forward. The surviving Vorkith ships retreated toward their homeworld, their formation shattered, their coordination broken. Some tried to flee into hyperspace. Human interdiction ships had already deployed gravity wells that made escape impossible. There would be no running from this. On the surface of Vorkith Prime, panic was spreading. The civilian population had never seen an enemy fleet above their world. The Dominion had always taken the war to others. Now the war had come home. Supreme Commander Draxer watched his remaining ships being driven back toward the planet. He had fewer than 1,000 vessels left. The humans still had over 11,000. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Supreme Commander, his communications officer said, "We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They are requesting to speak with you directly." Draxer hesitated. Surrender was not in the Vorkith nature. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of conquest or death. But looking at the tactical display, he knew that death was the only option remaining. "Put them through," he said. The face of Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on his display. She looked calm, almost peaceful. Behind her, he could see the organized efficiency of her command crew. No panic, no uncertainty, just quiet confidence. "Supreme Commander Draxer," she said, "I am Admiral Chen of the United Earth Fleet. You are defeated. Your navy is destroyed. Your orbital defenses are gone. We have complete control of the space around your world." "Then finish it," Draxer growled. "Rain fire upon us. Destroy our cities. That is what we would do to you." "Yes," Admiral Chen agreed. "That is what you would do. But we are not you." Draxer blinked. "What? We did not come here to destroy your world," Admiral Chen said. "We came here to end the threat you pose to ours. Those are not the same thing. You have already won. Why hesitate? We showed your kind no mercy. We have never shown anyone mercy. That is weakness." Admiral Chen shook her head slowly. "No, Supreme Commander. That is exactly what you never understood. Mercy is not weakness. It takes far more strength to hold back than to destroy. We could turn your planet into ash. We have the power. But having power and using it are different things." Draxer stared at her. In his entire life, he had never encountered this kind of thinking. The Vorkith philosophy was simple. Strength was everything. Those who had power used it without hesitation. Any other approach was weakness, and weakness was death. "Then what do you want?" he asked. "Surrender. Unconditional and complete. You will disarm your remaining forces. You will release every slave held by the Dominion. You will submit to trials for your crimes against the galaxy. And in return, your species will be allowed to live. You cannot expect us to accept these terms. The Dominion has ruled for 1,000 years. You have never faced us," Admiral Chen interrupted. "Supreme Commander, look at your tactical display. Look at what remains of your fleet. Look at the ships orbiting your world. You have no options. You have no allies. You have nothing but the choice I am offering you right now. Take it, or I will finish what you started when you knocked on our door." Draxer was silent for a long moment. His officers watched him, waiting. The weight of 1,000 years of Vorkith pride pressed down on him. Surrender was unthinkable. Surrender was dishonor. Surrender was the only option remaining. "What guarantee do we have that you will honor your terms?" he asked finally. "None," Admiral Chen said. "You will have to trust us. I know that is difficult for your kind. Trust is not something you understand, but you have no choice. Accept or die. Those are your options." The bridge was silent. Every Vorkith in the command bunker watched their Supreme Commander, the greatest military leader their species had ever produced, brought to his knees by a species they had dismissed as insects. Draxer closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fire was gone. Only exhaustion remained. "The Vorkith Dominion surrenders," he said. The words tasted like poison on his tongue. "We accept your terms." Admiral Chen nodded. "A wise decision. Transmit orders to your remaining forces. Any ship that does not stand down immediately will be destroyed. We will begin landing ground forces within the hour to secure your command centers and government buildings. Do not resist." The transmission ended. Draxer stood in silence for a moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Send the order," he said quietly. "All forces, stand down. The war is over." Above Vorkith Prime, the remaining ships of the Dominion Navy powered down their weapons. Across the Empire, the same orders went out. Surrender, stand down. The war was over. In the space of a single month, the Vorkith Dominion had gone from the greatest threat in the galaxy to a defeated power awaiting judgment, and the galaxy watched in stunned silence. On Nexus Prime, the Consortium Assembly received the news with disbelief that slowly transformed into something else: fear. The Vorkith had been terrible, but they had been familiar. The humans were unknown, unpredictable. They had built an empire-shattering fleet in secret. They had ignored the Consortium's attempts at alliance. They had crushed the Dominion in weeks. What would they do now? High Chancellor Yendris convened an emergency session. The chamber was packed, every representative desperate for answers. "The humans have won," she announced. "The Vorkith Dominion has surrendered unconditionally. The war that has defined our civilization for 2 centuries is over." The assembly erupted in cheers and celebrations. After so many years of darkness, victory seemed impossible to believe. Species that had been dying were now saved. Worlds that had been written off as lost could be reclaimed. But Yendris raised her hand for silence. "Before we celebrate," she said, "we must consider what comes next. The humans did not fight this war for us. They did not coordinate with us. They did not ask for our help or our approval. They won this war alone, on their own terms, for their own reasons. What does it matter?" Called out Ambassador Thesjenvor. "The Vorkith are defeated. Our people are saved." "It matters," Yendris replied, "because the humans now control the largest, most advanced military force in the galaxy, and we have no idea what they intend to do with it." The celebrations died. The representatives looked at each other with new uncertainty. Admiral Torvax spoke up. "We must approach them carefully. Offer them partnership. Make them part of the consortium. Bring them into the fold before they decide they do not need us at all." "And if they refuse?" Ambassador Creel asked. The Havian month after the surrender of the Vorkith Dominion, the galaxy held its breath. Human ships remained in orbit around Vorkith Prime. Ground forces had secured key government facilities and military installations. The leaders of the Dominion were in custody, awaiting trial for their crimes. The once mighty empire was silent, defeated, waiting to learn its fate. And across the galaxy, billions of beings wondered what the humans would do next. On Nexus Prime, a delegation of consortium representatives prepared to travel to Vorkith Prime. High Chancellor Yendris herself would lead the group, accompanied by senior ambassadors and military advisors. They had been granted permission to meet with Admiral Chen and the human command. It was the first direct contact between the consortium leadership and the humans since the war began. As her transport approached the Vorkith system, Yendris studied the data on the human fleet. 12,000 ships, weapons technology that surpassed anything in the consortium arsenal. And behind them, on Earth, the industrial capacity to build more. These humans had spent 40 years preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Now they had won that war in a matter of weeks. What would they do with their victory? The consortium transport docked with the UES Vengeance. Yendris and her delegation were escorted through corridors filled with human crew members, who watched them with polite curiosity. The ship was efficient, clean, and decorated with images and symbols that meant nothing to alien eyes, but clearly held deep significance for the humans. Admiral Chen met them in a conference room overlooking Vorkith Prime through the windows. The dark world of the defeated Dominion hung in space, its orbital rings still smoldering from the battle. "High Chancellor," Admiral Chen said, "thank you for coming. Thank you for receiving us," Yendris replied. "The consortium is grateful for what you have done. The Vorkith were a threat we could not defeat on our own. You have saved countless lives. We did not do it for you," Admiral Chen said plainly. "We did it because the Vorkith attacked our home. They forced us into this war. We simply ended it. Nevertheless, the result is the same. The galaxy is free from Vorkith tyranny. And now, what comes next?" Admiral Chen gestured for the delegation to sit. Human aides provided refreshments, carefully selected to be safe for each species present. When everyone was settled, the Admiral spoke. "The Vorkith Dominion has surrendered unconditionally. We will oversee the disarmament of their remaining military forces. Their leaders will face trial for their crimes, with judges from multiple species. Those who are found guilty will be punished according to their crimes. The Vorkith species itself will be allowed to survive. You choose mercy?" Admiral Torvax asked. He had insisted on joining the delegation, and his scarred face showed the same confusion that many in the consortium felt. After everything they did, they would have exterminated your entire species. "Yes," Admiral Chen agreed. "They would have. And we could do the same to them. But that is not who we are. We built our fleet to protect ourselves, not to become conquerors. We fought this war because we had no choice. We choose not to become monsters because we do have a choice, that is, not the philosophy most species would adopt, High Chancellor Yendris said carefully. No, Admiral Chen admitted, it is not. But it is ours. The conference continued for hours. The consortium representatives asked about humanity's intentions for the future. Would they join the consortium? Would they take the Vorkith's place as a galactic power? Would they use their fleet to impose their will on others? Admiral Chen answered each question patiently. We will not join the consortium, she said. We have watched how your alliance operates. We do not agree with many of your methods, but we will not oppose you either. We have no interest in ruling the galaxy. Then what do you want? Yendris asked. To be left alone, Admiral Chen said simply. We never wanted to be involved in your wars. We never wanted to be part of your politics. We built our fleet because we knew that someday someone would force us to fight. Now that fight is over. We want to go home, and the fleet, the power you now possess, will remain. We will never be caught unprepared again, but we will not use it for conquest. We will not threaten other species. We will simply be ready in case someone else decides to knock on our door. The delegation returned to Nexus Prime with a treaty proposal. Earth would maintain diplomatic relations with the consortium. Trade agreements would be established. Information would be shared. But humanity would remain independent, neutral, and uninvolved in galactic affairs unless directly threatened. Many in the consortium were unhappy with this arrangement. They wanted human ships under their command. They wanted access to human technology. They wanted to control this new power before it could become a threat. But High Chancellor Yendris understood something that others did not. The humans had just demonstrated that they could not be controlled. They had hidden an entire military buildup for 40 years. They had destroyed the greatest threat in the galaxy in a matter of weeks. If they wanted to be left alone, then the galaxy would leave them alone. The alternative was too terrible to consider. 5 years later, the galaxy had changed. The Vorkith trials were complete. The worst criminals had been executed. Others had been sentenced to labor on the worlds they had devastated. The Vorkith species itself was beginning the long process of rebuilding. Under the watchful eyes of international observers, the consortium had stabilized. Without the constant threat of Vorkith invasion, resources that had been dedicated to war were now being used for reconstruction. Worlds that had been written off as lost were being reclaimed. Species that had been refugees were returning home. And Earth had become the most respected neutral power in the galaxy. They did not seek influence. They did not demand tribute. They did not interfere in the affairs of other species. But when disputes rose that could not be resolved by other means, both sides often agreed to submit to human arbitration. The species that had hidden from the galaxy for 40 years was now trusted precisely because they wanted nothing from anyone. On Earth, life continued much as it had before. The fleet remained, maintained and updated, always ready. But the soldiers who had fought the war against the Vorkith had returned home. Schools were built. Children were born. The world that had prepared for decades for destruction now began to build for the future. Admiral Sarah Chen retired 5 years after the war. She had never wanted to be a warrior. She had simply done what was necessary when the time came. Now she lived in a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean, spending her days reading and gardening. She still received visitors sometimes, ambassadors from the consortium who wanted to understand humanity better, historians documenting the war, journalists seeking interviews. She turned most of them away politely. But one day, a consortium diplomatic shuttle landed near her home. High Chancellor Yendris, now elderly even by the long standards of her crystalline species, had made the journey personally. They sat on Chen's porch, watching the sun set over the ocean. For a long time, neither spoke. I have wondered something for 5 years, Yendris finally said. May I ask you a question, Admiral? I am not an admiral anymore, Chen said. Just Sarah. And yes, you may ask, why did you stay hidden so long? You could have revealed your strength earlier. You could have intervened in the war, saved billions of lives. Why did you wait? Sarah was quiet for a moment. She picked up her tea and took a slow sip before answering. Because we knew that someday, Someone would knock on our door, she said, and we wanted to be ready to answer. But why not help sooner? Why not? Because once you use power, you can never go back to not having it. Sarah set down her tea. We watched your consortium for 40 years. We saw how species with power used it, how they bullied others, how they sacrificed smaller allies for their own benefit. We did not want to become like that. So we waited until we had no choice. And now, you have more power than anyone. You could do anything you wanted. Sarah smiled. Yes, we could. But that is precisely why we do not. Power is not about what you can do. It is about what you choose not to do. We chose not to destroy the Vorkith when we could have. We chose not to take their place as conquerors. We chose to go home and live in peace. Yendris was silent for a long time. The sun had almost disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I think I understand now, she said finally. You were not hiding from us. You were not afraid of the galaxy. You were protecting us from what you might become if you were not careful. Sarah nodded slowly. We have a saying on Earth, those who seek power should never be given it. We did not want power. We only wanted to be safe. That is why, in the end, we could be trusted with power. They watched the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the galaxy continued to spin. Wars would come and go. Empires would rise and fall. But Earth would remain, quiet and watchful, ready to answer if anyone was foolish enough to knock on their door again. But no one ever did. The sleeping giant had awakened once. No one wanted to see it awaken again. And humanity, at long last, had the peace they had always wanted. Not because they were weak, not because they were cowards, but because they had peace.